Chapter 4, Council of Wind. Poulon Island. Verithwain Netherbreeze gazed out the window of his carriage. The central island amazed him, even after living here for 10 years. "It is heart, brain, and lungs of all Loar," he murmured in reverence. The carriage pulled away from the mighty gate that stood like a silent sentinel at the edge of a precipice, holding back the void. Of the original 19 Poulons, only 17 remained, each connected to a twin, one for every other island. Verithwain noted the bookstores, schools, and wizards' enclaves all arranged throughout the Wayran district, and the absent-minded logic of scholars. He recalled his recent visits to other districts as he ran errands. Heavily armed soldiers, younger Aeromancers, and even wizards surrounded Zamador's perpetually inactive gate. Humus's Poulon hummed with energy as it disgorged a steady stream of wagons loaded with crops for the rest of Loar. Grand taverns, illusionist halls, massage parlors, and every kind of amusement the citizens could desire comprised the district of Epicurus Poulon. The district's distractions had tempted Verithwain to spend several days there after relaying an order from one of the council members for a new floral scheme. From Safsara's glassware to Quarry's metals, each district shadowed the reality one would find upon stepping through the massive arcane portals. The carriage crossed over a wide artificial channel of water. Channels just like it wound throughout Poulon Island, the tamed expanse of sea usually found at the center of an island. Hundreds of years of effort had removed the waters from their original position to ever more confined pathways, providing running water, transportation, and sewage. Verithwain watched numerous watercrafts of all shapes and sizes float along these pathways. Hydromancers used magic to guide the boats. Oars and tillers were tools unknown to most. Some of the hydromancers dressed in neat sleeveless clothing, designed for ease of swimming, others in no better than rags. All wore shades of blue, displaying pride in their heritage. Hours passed for Verithwain. He smiled as he looked out the window for the 100th time. Before him, at the center of the island, a building soared majestically into the afternoon sky. The hall was a warren of private chambers for functionaries, peppered with various-sized rooms. Geomancers had originally designed the structure to house a different, much larger form of government. Now each diplomat, secretary, and page claimed their own office, with the size of said office based on the importance of the official, of course. Verithwain paid the carriage driver, walked up the granite steps, and passed through the enormous main doors. Down halls and up countless flights of stairs he strode, waving to pages he knew who scurried about on council business. He stopped for a moment at one particular ornate landing to glance at another set of doors like those at the entrance. Central to the hall was the largest single room in all of Loar, the Grand Chamber. More like the largest single waste of space. No one needed a room that could house over 200,000 people. The Grand Chamber was first formed so that all the survivors of the Sundered could come together and take part in the government. It had never held more than a couple of thousand, and that had been so long ago that only the custodians of the hall knew what it looked like inside now. Such a sad legacy. Verithwain passed many more unused rooms before reaching his destination. Some the size of a ruling Aeromancer's dining room, others were amphitheaters for general gatherings. Directly above the Grand Chamber, at the very pinnacle of the building, perched the Sky Chamber. It boasted a single wide balcony made of granite. A sturdy, transparent crystal wall surrounded the Sky Chamber on every side but one, the opening that granted access to the encircling balcony. The wall allowed a magnificent vista of all Poulon from inside the main room. The opening faced due north. North. Originally an arbitrary direction until the Geomancers fixed magnetic fields to each island. So much has been lost since they left us. Verithwain shook his head. He always felt empty coming here. The entire balcony panned out into open sky, with only a waist-high rail between viewers and a 50-foot drop to the gently curved roof of the Grand Chamber. Enough space existed in the balcony area for a number of comfortable chairs with matching end tables for drinks, food, and the occasional book. It was not uncommon for less important meetings of the Council of Wind to take place here. Reports in hand, Verithwain walked in and found a seat. Scattered in a subtle, tasteful way between the entryways were tapestries, sculptures, and other decorative pieces meant to project pleasure and, more importantly, calm. A beautiful carpet made on Epicurea and installed by Tinikian weavers covered the granite floor from wall to wall. On the level just below, a fully staffed kitchen served meals, and, more often, wine, to those who met here. The whole area was meant for 20 people to meet in extravagance, with every comfort provided. In this chamber, 18 individuals, even now, tried to breathe life into the dying world. Verithwain leaned back to listen and watch.
"This is not only unlawful, it is sinful."
A rotund man in ornate robes had turned purple. He emptied the contents of a large sack onto the ornate aetherpine table, an assortment of strange objects varying in size that looked like nothing more than children's toys. Several others present hid grins behind cups of wine or polite coughs. At its formation, the Council of Wind contained an amalgam of sorcerers, whose perspective focused on selfish desires, or, if the individual was a good leader, the needs of their own island. Chaos reigned in the meetings, and the common folk coined the title Council of Storms. Shouting matches often echoed throughout the hall as each ruler vied for position and for supremacy of their island over others. In its early years, the council accomplished little, and the people questioned their choice in asking them to rule. A tall, stately gentleman at the head of the table folded his hands together and leaned back away from the toys. "To what exactly are you referring, my lord?"
These...
There was a significant pause as the fat Aeromancer searched for an appropriately vile word.
"Devices."
His voice wheezed with the effort of speaking and moving at the same time. One of the other members of the council picked up a toy, a narrow metallic box with numbers on one face. She played with the longer of 2 arrows radiating from the center. A slender finger spun the longer arrow first one direction, then another. The moment she put her hands on the box, 2 or 3 of the others present gasped. Lord Malichorum had a fit of apoplexy. It took several seconds for him to find his voice again, leaving the woman to speak first. "I've heard of this toy. I believe it's called a clack or a cluke or something. Children use them to keep accurate time for their games or whatever. Although," she tapped her finger on her chin, "this one seems to be missing one of its thingies here on the front. If I remember properly, there should be at least 3 of them. It does have all 25 numbers on it." Her voice drawled in the slow commoner accents of South Seraph. Lady Yuri Marisha, the first in her family to rule the island, rose to power after the last Sapharan council member died childless. Her ascension was due more to her popularity and unquestionable magical power than her wisdom.
"You are contaminating yourself with this technology, madam,"
Extus finally sputtered.
"Please set the device back down."
Reluctantly, Yuri replaced the clack. Lord Malichorum faced the tall gentleman again, directing his next words to the whole council.
"This is the work of bards. They make grand claims to be historians, keepers of the way things really were. Most reprehensible of all, they have now taken upon themselves to be teachers of our youth, usurping Lord Tramquin's tutors. That is where they begin. They fill the children's heads with false tales. They relate histories that go against the honored official versions penned by our scribes. This sows seeds of discontent, and they water with these so-called toys, which are very thinly disguised technology." Spittle flew from his mouth. He stood again and pounded his fist against his palm to emphasize each point. "The toys appear to make life easier, more fun. The children, not knowing any better, gleefully take such evil into their homes."
Lord Malichorum visibly settled himself.
"My ladies and lords, the people are exhausted fighting for survival against this diminished world. They are losing hope because of their worried existence. Parents allow, and in some cases even encourage, their offspring to commit sin by using this technology, not knowing the consequences. Some even use it themselves, seeking false hope and a temporary relief through technology." Soon we will have a full-grown crop of rebellion, spreading this evil throughout Loar. We will have another sundering that will bring a final end.
Out of self-preservation, the Council of Wind chose one of their own to lead them. They gave this leader power to govern meetings, to bring order to the chaos, yet with no additional voting power and no additional authority over any of the other islands. Every 4 years, the council elected a new head by simple majority vote. There existed no limit to the number of times an individual could be elected. Lord Extus. The tall gentleman nodded to the elfin lord of Galamgal. It is well known by all in Loar that to use technology of any kind is sinful. Yet who of this council is ready to go so far as to believe that a few toys would bring about the last end of the world? We are all aware of the dangers of incrementalism. We see the evidence in the histories that refer back to the months leading up to the War of Wind and Fire. Our education might stand some improvement, but I believe less regulation, not more, is the key. The sorry state of education was also a sore point between many of the Aeromancers on the council. Malichorum's tirade had caused several of the council members to grow antsy, a fact Gamaliel Ulkestein was shrewd enough to gather. The somber head of the council, Lord Riftwind, peered over his steepled fingers. Do you call for a vote of action, Lord Malichorum?
Yes.
Malichorum sat down. Very well. Do you have a draft, or do you seek deliberation before preparing one?
I have a draft,
he wheezed, digging in his voluminous robes. After much effort, he produced a twine-bound stack of 18 leather packets. Each contained more than 20 sheets of paper. Paper? Lord Elkestein took his seat as well. And by the looks of this script, you paid a lot for the scribes, Extus. Lord Malichorum ignored him. After everyone had received their packet, Lord Riftwind declared a recess in order to give them enough time to read through the proposed law. Most chose to wander out to the open balcony to sip drinks and relax as they read. Some adjourned to a lounge several stories below. Extus remained at the table and had a meal brought to him. He reread for the 100th time his carefully crafted work. Valkanes, his assistant, spoke on occasion, and only to ask if his liege needed more food or spiced tea. The deliberations concerning the bards were too important for Extus to drink wine as he normally did. Over the next 3 hours, the council members deliberated. 1 or 2 would come together and discuss in hushed tones the proposal, careful to erect spells warding against eavesdropping by others. Groups formed, split, and others formed before all returned to their seats at the main table. Lord Riftwind rose and took a deep breath, then addressed the council in an even more formal tone than before. The action before us is a moratorium on all bardic activity in the islands of Loar. Lord Extus Malichorum provided evidence of his claim that certain subversive elements, known as bards, within several of our populations have been telling histories different from the official records kept by the council. Furthermore, these bards have begun subverting our children through the incremental introduction of technology, by way of toys, which this law states will potentially lead to the final destruction of our world. Lady Marisha rolled her eyes. This law will require that all entertainers register with the government. Once the moratorium ends, only those epics, tales, and performances approved by an appointed government committee may be presented in public or private. Malichorum's law requires each island to post notices reminding citizens of the sinful nature of technology. The law also enumerates harsher punishments for parents who allow this heresy into their homes. Finally, owing to the spiritual import of this matter, this law mandates the death penalty to any who encourage acceptance of, teach the use of, or actually provide access to technology. Anyone found guilty of such is to be thrown to the void, without appeal and without possibility for mitigation. Are there any here who would speak further on this matter before it is brought to a vote? Dalgan Riftwind had been the leader of the Council of Wind for 61 years. At the end of his 8th year in the office, his re-election had been unanimous. Despite several changes in membership, this trend lasted through every election cycle since. New members usually followed the lead of the older. Lord Riftwind proved himself the most capable leader ever to hold the post. By swift, efficient methods, he established a firm control over proceedings. For example, those who interrupted another speaker were silenced through council-approved spells he had devised for the purpose, and were not called on to speak for the rest of the day. Any who had agendas they wished to push through lost momentum when they had to hold off an additional day or more, just waiting to be called on to speak. This occurred rarely in recent years. The Council of Storms was more doldrums these days. Halfway down the table, a small magical light winked on. The subtle blue glow signaled a wish to speak. Lord Riftwind gave a slight nod in that direction. Lady Aeromancers. None within the chamber failed to turn and look her way as Lady Aeromancers stood. When she spoke, her voice fell on the ear like rose petals on skin. Of all the islands in Loar, Epicurea will suffer most from the proposed law. It is an island of entertainment and leisure, and bards naturally converge there in great number. While most bards love to travel, a number make tentative homes on our island. She looked each member in the eye, knowing that none could look away. Each of you knows how stern we are about citizens upholding the law. Epicurea understands that when people participate in leisure, they tend to relax every aspect of themselves, including their inhibitions. We understand full well the waning of hope in our tired world, and how powerful leisure, stories, and diversions can be for the people. Should Malichorum's law pass, however, the industry of Epicurea will be devastated. But I do not speak today for the selfish reasons of a single island. My friends, I must strongly advise against this law. If we continue to restrict the freedoms of our people, we will only drive the dissenting voices underground. What was a simple scratch will become a deep wound, festering under the surface, ready to bubble up in open rebellion. In banning the bards' tales, we give them credence. We show that we have something to hide. Rather than take umbrage at tales told against us, we should learn to laugh at ourselves, take joy in a good parody, be at peace with all men. The lives of the Sundered are difficult enough. Leave them an avenue of relief. Lord Malichorum moved as if to interrupt, but after a quick glance at Lord Riftwind, he closed his mouth, sat back in his chair, and fumed. Eli continued as if nothing happened. Furthermore, the term technology has ever been ill-defined. Everyone uses tools of some sort in our day-to-day lives. Wizards' globes are tools. Grain mills are tools. Yet because it takes a modicum of magic to run them, they do not gain the appellation of technology. However, wagons are also tools, and they require no magic to run, only destricor to pull them. Would we ban them? Are they a complex device, according to this law? Where will our dispensation of justice end as we attempt to eradicate this force we all dread? We cannot let fear rule us and compel us to restrict the freedoms of our people further than what is absolutely necessary. Several heads nodded in agreement as she ended her comments and retook her seat. One or two showed no reaction. More frowned or shook their heads. A number of lights shone on the table. Lord Riftwind motioned toward one of these, and the charm of Lady Aeromancers' discourse was severed. Their lives are difficult, my lady. Lord Braden Thunder's voice rumbled like a mythical rainstorm still in the distance. The land does not give the same bounty as when our world was whole. Therefore they must work all the harder to live. All the more reason to provide limits for them. They do not need the added difficulty of fearing and mistrusting the government they established. They certainly do not need the confusion technology incrementalism brings. All know what technology is. A wagon is not complex enough. This is common knowledge. Fear is a proper motivator if governed by rational thought. It is an instinct the gods instilled in us for preservation. Fear can save a man's life. As he spoke, he banged a mailed hand on the table. Braden was more skilled in martial feats than in aeromancy. He also maintained the largest military force in the islands. His hardcore stance favoring discipline and limits surprised no one. Lord Thunder practically raised his troops like sons and daughters and was well liked on Upper Italicon. His citizens were well organized and law-abiding. These bards choose to bypass the grievance system and make cowardly attacks against not only us, but the people through us by these lies. They corrupt our children slowly through entertainment, through amusement. The parents are too tired from eking out a living from our paltry islands to make wise decisions about this. They simply do not know how to tell the difference anymore. We must do so for them, for their own good. Lord Riftwind next recognized the only other member wearing metal armor. Lady Sasha Steelguard ruled Fairland, where the majority of non-humanoid races chose to live. I acknowledge the wisdom in both honored council members' words. Therefore I propose we seek a middle course. Several expected her to continue by providing some explanation of what that course might be. Instead, she simply retook her seat. Lord Simeon Sophereth of Poulon spoke next. I do not believe some of you understand the extent of the damage these bards do. Just last week I was forced to execute one as an example. During one particularly scathing diatribe against the council, she grew violent and attacked me. As you can see, I still bear the scar. He turned his cheek to show them. How long before the violence these bards already evince spreads to the general populace? How quick to anger is anyone who, say, goes without sleep for a night? Now compound that anger and those fatigued by a lifetime. The bards know this, and they purposely use it to their own gain at the expense of those they manipulate. The debate continued for over an hour. No middle ground was ever offered. Lady Steelguard never spoke again that day. One by one, a deep yellow light, the color of crucial metal, in front of each seat lit, indicating a mind made up and a call to vote. After a while, the speeches began to repeat, and a large majority of the voting light shone. Lord Dalgan stood and looked each member of the council in the eye. The gravity of this issue is greater than some of you may know. He paused as if about to add his own opinion to the discussion, then changed his mind. The vote has been called for by a quorum of lights. Let us be done with this. In the end, of the 18 on the council, 10 voted for the harsher measure. 6 voted against it, and 2 abstained, including Lady Steelguard and, as he often did, Lord Riftwind. Council members stood to stretch or seek relief in the lavatories one floor down. Lord Riftwind took notice of Verithwain at last, and called him over with a curt, "Nether breeze." Verithwain winced and looked at the floor. It will be a long night for this particular bard.